Welcome back. In our previous video, we worked through the arguments of an Abraham and Hammurabi synchronism in Genesis 14. But when did this encounter happen? Hammurabi reigned for about 43-ish years. According to the middle chronology, he ruled from 1792 to 1750. Dr. Falk, in one of the videos made for the members, not subscribers, argues the Battle of the Nine Kings happened in Hammurabi's 39th year. I'm a simple man. I see a video about chronology and synchronisms, I watch it. He bases his statement on an article written by an Iraqi scholar where the 43 lines of an eponym list of Hammurabi are presented. I got to read it, and it's a fascinating article. The artifact resurfaced in an Iraqi museum. It's not a complete list, it has holes in it. But if you count the lines, next to year 39 it says, quote, "The year he slaughtered all the enemies." Based on this article, Dr. Falk is convinced this statement about all of Hammurabi's enemies being defeated refers to the Battle of Genesis 14. I asked him how certain he is about his conclusion on Hammurabi's year 39 being in Canaan. Just a note about the video fragment, he meant to say eponym instead of epithet. It was past midnight when he answered my question. He was obviously tired after a 4-hour live stream answering questions. Here is the answer to my question.
Bible exegete, how certain are you Hammurabi was in Canaan year 39? Okay, it comes down to his epithets, okay? What are the epithets of his years? Now, we have all 43 epithets listed, and the only one that does seem to qualify is year 35, the year he subdues all enemies, and that's the epithet. So you've got, like, for previous epithets, there's one where he subdues Mari, and he's got other epithets too. But year 39, that's the year he subdues all enemies. That is the indication that he goes on mass campaign everywhere, as far as he can go. So to subdue all enemies, you have to go everywhere. Unless all your enemies come to you. I mean, there's always that. I mean, that could happen. So I think given the options, year 39 is the best option. Again, it's the one where he claims to have subdued everybody. You know, if you subdue all enemies, that's pretty much it. So that, I think, is the best alternative. So I would say I'm probably about 90% sure that it's year 39. I mean, that leaves us some room for doubt, but I don't think it's a serious doubt.
90% certainty is quite high with very little room for doubt. There is nothing in Hammurabi's eponym list saying anything about a Levantine campaign in year 39 though. Obviously, all enemies doesn't mean all enemies. For an ancient king, the whole world was their enemy more or less. But it doesn't mean he went to Greece or Egypt to fight. Hammurabi's empire, as far as we know, didn't spread to Canaan. Hammurabi must have had specific enemies in mind. Who were these enemies he defeated in year 39? We have other eponym lists that give us more details about year 39. Lists Dr. Falk didn't consult. If you read the article carefully, more date lists of Hammurabi's reign are mentioned. All these lists need to be read together, not separately. Some of them give us more specific info about eponym years. Dominique Charpin published in 2012 a biography of Hammurabi where he quotes another eponym description where year 39 is mentioned. Quote, "A victory over all the enemies in the land of Subartum is commemorated for year 39, so he was obliged to reinforce his authority there 2 years later." Page 70. The author quotes a description that gives more information about year 39. Notice where these enemies were from, the land of Subarta. Subartu, or Subartum, however you want to say it, is north and northeast of Mesopotamia. It has absolutely nothing to do with Canaan. Hammurabi is on a campaign to defeat the allies of the Elamites in this northern territory. Here's another quote from the same biographer of the Babylonian king. Quote, "Year 37 is marked by renewed military campaigning. He went north and northeastwards and notes specifically his victory over the army of the Guti, of the Turuku, of the Kakmum, and of the country of Subartum." Year 37 marks the beginning of this major campaign in the land of Subarta. 3 different groups are mentioned. These were hostile peoples that didn't want to subject to Hammurabi, and they allied with his enemies numerous times. They were allies of the Elamites before these were defeated in year 30. The war with the Elamites started in year 28. After this defeat, they became allies of Eshnuna because the Elamites were forced to withdraw from Mesopotamian affairs. This is what is said about year 32 in another eponym list of Hammurabi. The year when he conquered the armies of Eshnuna, of Subartum and of Gutium, and when he annexed the country of Mankisum along the banks of the Tigris as far as the land of Subartum. The year entry says it as clear as possible. Subartum is in the proximity of Tigris. Last I checked, Canaan was nowhere near the Tigris River. Hammurabi fought these rebels for over a decade. These groups are mentioned since his 28th year. He was able to defeat most of his enemies by year 32, yet these pesky rebels from around the Tigris were like a thorn in his flesh. He led a specific campaign against them for 3 years, years 37 through 39. Of course, he was thrilled when he finished defeating them. These pesky groups from the area of Subartum were finally defeated after he defeated the Elamites, Mari, and many more. Not reading what the other eponym texts say about this year is sloppy analysis and research. To be honest, it happens to all of us from time to time. I hope Dr. Falk will reconsider his position on year 39 due to the facts presented. So, when did the Battle of Genesis 14 happen then? We need not cherry pick the text, but read all the details. If we accept Amraphel as Hammurabi, we also need to take into consideration the other details of the text. Genesis 14 verses 4 and 5 state that the king against whom the Canaanites rebelled was the king of Elam. 12 years they had served Chedorlaomer, but in the 13th year they rebelled. In the 14th year, Chedorlaomer and the kings who were with him came and defeated the Rephaim and Ashtaroth Karnaim, the Zuzim and Ham, the Amim and Shavet Kirataim. The text is clear. The Canaanites served the Elamite king, not another king. The rebellion is against Chedorlaomer, not against Amraphel. The Elamite king leads this alliance, and the other kings are simply with him. That's what the text literally says. It's the Elamite king that led the coalition against the Canaanites. Once Hammurabi defeated the Elamites, they mostly withdrew from Mesopotamia, but the Elamite king was never in such a weak position to be part of a coalition led by Hammurabi. I dare to say that a coalition led by Hammurabi, of which the Elamites are part of, is a historical impossibility if one is familiar with Hammurabi's reign and the Elamites. Amraphel is considered important by the author of Genesis because he is mentioned first, but this is anachronistic and draws on his future reputation. At the time the War of the Nine Kings happens, Genesis 14 is clear. The Elamites are the ones that receive the tribute, and they are the ones leading this coalition. I think the details of Genesis 14 are spot on with the historical context we know about Elam and Babylon in Hammurabi's first 2 decades. The only plausible situation from my perspective is a coalition led by the Elamites early in Hammurabi's reign before he started fighting the Elamites in year 28. We're told Abraham defeated Chedorlaomer in verse 17, not Amraphel, aka Hammurabi and his allies. The king leading this coalition is the Elamite ruler. The short story is this. Tribute was paid to the Elamites. The Canaanite kings stopped paying. The Elamites gathered a coalition of Mesopotamian kings that were under their control more or less to bring the Canaanite cities under Elamite tribute again. We don't have any historical reference to Hammurabi or the Elamites in Canaan, but that doesn't mean absence of proof is proof of absence. They were there simply for tribute, something very common for those times. It also doesn't mean Abraham engaged their army entirely. Could have been just a small part of it, enough to free Lot and the other captives. Plus, Abraham wasn't alone. He was part of an alliance of 3 other Canaanites. Only Abraham's army had 318 fighters plus the other 3 leaders. There were probably well over 1,000, a good number for those days. Historically, Hammurabi defeats the Elamites in year 30. This is not a total destruction of the Elamites, but they simply stop having the influence they used to have over Mesopotamia. On the other side, Hammurabi's influence immensely grows where this void of power is created. For the Elamites and Babylonians to go on a campaign fighting together, it must happen before the battles between the two started. The first battle between the two parties took place sometime in year 28, and Hammurabi defeated them in year 30. It's from this point on that his political and military strength grows fast. We need to understand this. Hammurabi ruled over a small territory in his first years. At the beginning of his reign, Babylon was a mediocre power, landlocked in the Near East, dominated by a few superpowers according to Charpin. When Hammurabi became king, Babylon was only one of the numerous Mesopotamian city-states. It spanned only some 60 by 160 kilometers in size according to Mieroop. In the first decades of his reign, Hammurabi was a minor ally of the Elamites. His first or second decade would fit well with the details of Genesis 14. Babylon became a superpower only in the latter part of Hammurabi's reign, after he defeated the Elamites. Both the historical and biblical data make it possible for such an alliance led by the Elamites only before Hammurabi's 28th year, giving us 27 years, somewhere in the range 1792-1765 BC, if we consider the middle chronology. If you want to cherry pick the text and get rid of the details you dislike, be my guest, but that's not fair exegesis. I am aware Dr. Falk wants to push the Battle of Genesis 14 as late as possible in Hammurabi's reign. First of all, because of him usually favoring a low chronology. This is connected to him accepting the Hammurabi Neferhotep first synchronism, which has yet to convince a decent number of prominent Egyptologists and Assyriologists. Dr. Falk adopts this synchronism in his book on the Ark of the Covenant and in the Groundhog chronology. He places this synchronism in the last year of Hammurabi's reign in Neferhotep's first year, which is 1717 BC in his first version of a low chronology. At this point in time, this synchronism is simply a hypothesis, not an accepted fact. There isn't enough clear data to push for it. At least not yet. We're not 100% sure about the identity of Yantinu. Multiple people could have had this name. I get it. We all have our agendas, especially in chronology. Sorry to break it to you, but if we're honest, that's the truth. We all have hypotheses and theories we're trying to work through. Some stick, some don't. That's how chronology works, especially Bronze Age chronology. Another important identification Dr. Falk supports is that of Abraham's father, Terah, being Teru of Urkesh. In our next video, I will argue why I think this is an impossible correlation. Please like this video if you enjoyed it and subscribe so you can stay tuned. See you next time on the Bible Exegete, and I'm sure it's going to be an exciting topic. But before that, I want to ask you what your opinion about all this is. Do you think the idea of Hammurabi meeting Abraham between his first 20 years is plausible, or you have another idea? See you next time.